Hello everyone, this is Grace. It is July the 8th, 2023, and we're going to be taking a look at the year of Jubilee. Now we've been told that there is a Jubilee year, which is every 50 years, and every 50 years we are supposed to return every man to his property, and everything gets kind of reset, and all debts are forgiven. We actually have something similar here. If you live in America, we practice a lot of the Christian laws. They've been incorporated into our legal system, where depending upon what state you live in, every 7 years, sometimes every 10 years, I think some it's every 4 years, your if you owe a debt, it's erased. You're not legally obligated to pay that bill if it's been 7 years since you accrued it and you haven't paid anything on it or anything like that. But this, we're told, is every 50 years. Now, if you're like me, you have come across some conflicts in the Bible where you see this happening every 7 years. So let's go back, and we're going to go up a little bit, and we're going to look at the 7th year Sabbath, and then we're going to come back down and we're going to compare it to the Jubilee, which we know as the 50-year Sabbath. Okay, so let's go ahead, and we're going to start from Leviticus 25, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. But the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath of the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field, nor prune thy vineyard. That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest, thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vine undressed, for it is a year of rest unto the land. Now, I tried to figure out what was meant by this. This seems, I couldn't figure out if it had been added in, if they were trying to make the grape holy, or if maybe the Bible is telling you even the wine, the grapes that are used for the temple services, even those cannot be harvested. I decided to go with that until I found some evidence otherwise. They're saying even the ones that have been set apart for the temple, those cannot be harvested either. Okay, and that's why it's worded like this. This word means to separate here. It means to separate. That is consecrate. So, and I just thought it was strange that it was worded like this. So I did look into it a little bit, but I couldn't find any reason for it to be wrong, unless it was put in to try and make all grapes holy or something like that. But as long as you just see it as the fruits that are used for the temple service, it seems to be fine. So all of the land rests. The land for regular man, if it's consecrated land, then it rests as well. That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap. This is not correct, but we're going to go into that later. Thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vine undressed, for it is a year of rest unto the land. It's going to tell you right here that you can reap, but let's read through it. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee and for thy servant, and for thy maid, and for thy hired servant, and for thy stranger that sojourneth with thee, and for thy cattle, and for the beasts that are in the land, shall all the increase thereof be meat. You cannot You cannot sow the land and then reap the land. And it tells you right here, that which the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee and for thy servant and for thy maid and for the hired servant and for the stranger that sojourneth with thee. You can reap the land. You cannot, hold on, you can't harvest the land. You cannot sow the land. You cannot harvest the land. Things which grow on its own, you can harvest. It's going to say it somewhere else, so I'm not going to go into it deeply right now, but when we run across it again, I'll elaborate a little bit more. But this is not correct. I actually think this is correct, to be honest with you. This is why I didn't put it in red. I didn't put it in red because I think that it's saying you cannot harvest. Because it says it again when we get down into the Jubilee. I think I put it in red then, or pink or something like that. Here, I really think it's correct, but I think it's telling you cannot harvest it. You can eat from the land. That's why it says here it's going to be meat for you. What you cannot do is you cannot harvest the land. Reap, unfortunately, from the definition, I could not determine if it's saying you cannot eat from the land at all, or if it's saying you cannot harvest, because it says generally it means a harvest, especially to harvest. So if it's saying that you can't eat from the land, it's correct. I couldn't make this wrong because I think that it's saying you cannot harvest the land. All right, and you see right here that this is telling you the exact opposite of what you see here. It's saying it's going to be meat for you. That's food. The Sabbath of the land is going to be meat for you. That's food. That means you can eat from it. You just can't harvest it. And we'll see more about that later. Okay, so now we've looked at the few scriptures that they have about the Sabbath year. So let's go ahead and get into the Jubilee year. Because, as you're going to find out, this is not real. It is not real. And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee, 7 times 7 years, in the space of 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 49 years. So, I'm not sure. Look, the word times does not mean multiply. At first, I couldn't figure out why they had so many words, why it didn't just say 50 years, and why go through all of this trouble. But it's going to tell you something that needs to be done on the 49th year. I think it's just trying to be a bunch of fancy talk because it's not real. But I did read through all of the uses for times, and it just doesn't mean multiply. It means multiply in today's language, but in the Bible, it doesn't mean multiply. Now, there is a word for folds, but folds is different than multiply. Like you can have 7-fold or something like that, and you can use this word for times, but that's different than multiply. This is an error. And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee, 7 times 7 years, and the space of 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 49 years. It's not a big error, but it is an error. It bothers me because it gives a new use for the word, but it's not used like this anywhere else, so it's not that big of a deal. But it's just inaccurate. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound. On the 10th day of the 7th month, the day of atonement, shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. So this word Jubilee, we discussed this before. A clamor, that is acclamation of joy, or a battle cry, especially clangor of trumpets, as an alarm. Hold on. We're going to come back to that in just a moment. This word here is the word used. This is a covenant word. This word sound means to pass over or pass through. It means to set apart. It's the same word that was used in Leviticus 18 when it says, have your children pass through the fire to Moloch. It's the same word, or a different version of it, I think, is used in Genesis when the lantern passed through the corpses. Now, of course, that's voodoo. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what the voodoo, they're always dealing with dead animals. They're always dealing with the dead. So I'm not sure what symbolic imaging was supposed to be represented by the lantern passing through the corpses, but there's always something dead in the voodoo stuff. So who knows what it means? Maybe they do. I'm not familiar enough with it. But it's a covenant word to cross over, usually used very widely of any transition, literally or figuratively. I think it says to be set apart somewhere, because it's used like that. It's set apart. To carry over, overcome, on or over, conduct over, convey over, current, delivery, do away, enter, escape, fail, gender, get over, make, go away, beyond. Okay. Here's set apart. It's to set apart right here. It has a lot of uses, and there's a lot of different, if we were to look it up, there would be a lot of different words associated with it, but it's also the language that's used when those covenants are being made. Usually sometimes, I can't say even usually, because it's in the Bible so many times. Sometimes it's something basic, like men are set apart to go to war. This group is going to go to war. Other times, they like to use it with their deceptions in the Bible. Case in point, this. You're making some kind of covenant of war, which you don't know anything about. That's what this is. This is not even the word for Jubilee. The word for Jubilee, we're going to see it down further somewhere. Here it is right here. And this is wrong. They changed this as well. But this is like some sort of covenant with war. Like you're going to go to war on the Day of Atonement. Who are you supposed to be going to war with? God? Does that make sense? Who's going to win that war? You're fighting a losing battle. That makes no sense. But still, that's the picture that they're drawing here. Thou shalt cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month in the Day of Atonement. That's the Day of Judgment. This is supposed to be a solemn day. It's not a day of rejoicing. They're going to tell you something that you would normally rejoice over. But here you're supposed to be doing it on the Day of Atonement. And it's every 50 years. It doesn't say to do it on the 49th year. It says to do it on the 10th day of the 7th month. Shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land? And this is what we're going to see consistently. They're going to consistently speak of the 7th year, as though this is happening every 7th year, but it's supposed to only happen on the 49th year. Well, they say it up here. Actually, I take that back. Then shall thou cause the trumpet. No, this just means trumpet. Well, hold on. Let me check it out. Hold on. Okay, I checked the word in scriptures for all. This is not there, but it is the most logical interpretation. So this is correct. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day, 7th month. In the Day of Atonement shall you make the trumpet to sound throughout all your land. So it is on the 49th year. And ye shall hallow the 50th. Ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you. And ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. So, and ye shall hallow the 50th year. This is another oversight which they made. This is not the 50th year. This is incorrect. These should be an added word here. It could be the year 2050. It could be the year 3050. It cannot be the 50th year because it's not the 50th year. These would have to be an added word for it to be the 50th year. The 49th year, the 50th year. This is why they don't have a "the" added up here anywhere. You shall hallow the 50th year. It's a simple oversight, but it's an oversight nonetheless. And proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It's only for the Hebrews. We're going to see that later. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. Okay, I skipped this word on purpose because it's kind of, it's a little bit complicated, a little bit tricky what they did here. Let's look at the definition of the word jubilee. The blast of a horn from its continuous sound, especially the signal of the silver trumpets, hence the instrument itself, and the festival thus introduced, jubilee, ram's horn, trumpet. See, they made it the horn and the festival, but you only really think of the festival. But what they did was they also made it into a ram's horn, and this is simply not correct. It is not a ram's horn. This is something that was added in. Actually, I could find no references for a ram's horn in the Bible. That whole thing was made up. I could find no indication of it. This was the only indication, and this was added in. And you're going to see, because they added it in almost word for word where it's used in the Bible. The Jubilee is supposed to mean festival. Now, it can mean ram's horn. It can mean both, but those are a little bit, those are two very different things. Now, I didn't research the history of the word or anything like that. I'm just looking at the logical application of it in the Bible. It doesn't make sense to use it as a ram's horn in this particular case. And it's not needed. It's only needed in Joshua, where they're sounding the Jubilee as a ram's horn. And they use the word ram's horn. They use the silver horns. Up here, let me see. Up here where it says, no. Actually, I put a scripture in here. We'll look at the scripture and then I'll remember what I wanted to say. Something about, sounding the horn on the 10th day of the 7th month. I can't remember. Let's move on. But just understand that the only reason why this has a definition of the ram's horn is so that they can put that deception in the Bible. A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. You shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes in it of thy vine undressed. Again, it's going to say the exact opposite in the next verse. For it is the jubilee, it shall be holy unto you. You shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. So I can just think that this word reap has to mean harvest. You don't sow and you don't reap the harvest thereof. You can, however, eat the increase. Again, it says that 50th year. The reason why they have all of these here, let me read the next verse. In the year of this jubilee, you shall return every man unto his possession. The reason why they have these and these that's and stuff like that to point it out is because when they did the original deception, when they put it in here originally, they kept both the 7th year jubilee and then they added this 50-year jubilee. They would have unearthed some rare transcript that showed a second jubilee, and then they just plucked it in the Bible. This was their newest deception. But they couldn't get rid of the old one, because who would forget that every 7 years you got a new start? The power of the people is very evident in the New Testament. Throughout the New Testament, you see them saying they couldn't do this to Jesus because they feared the people. They couldn't do that to Jesus because they feared the people. In the end, they had to actually separate Jesus from the people. The illustration is the lamb. When they took the lamb and they separated the lamb from the rest of the crop, from the rest of the flock, they separated the lamb from the rest of the flock before they would slaughter it. And I would imagine you have to do that with animals. Not lambs. You don't have to do that with lambs, because lambs are so docile. They just won't turn against you. But the lamb was separated. So they had to separate Jesus from the flock and turn the people against him, so that in order to crucify him. Because throughout the Bible, the people, the Pharisees feared the people. And so when they made these changes, they had to do them shady. They had to be tricky about it, because you couldn't just up and change the Bible. The people would not have stood for it. So they kept both of them. And so they put words like this: in this Jubilee, meaning the 50-year Jubilee as opposed to the 7th-year Jubilee. But then they just sent their preachers out to work, and they taught that the 50-year Jubilee was the Jubilee. They didn't erase it from everyone's minds. It was still handed down. I have always thought that it was 7 years until I started studying and watching other preachers, and then I started hearing 50 years. But it was never erased entirely from my mind that it was 7 years. But there was 2. That's why they have it worded like this: a jubilee shall the 50th year be unto you. It's not the 50th year, but this is okay because it doesn't have this. I forget what it's called, but it's it's every 50th year be unto you. You shall not sow, neither reap, which is correct as long as this means harvest. As long as this means harvest, that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes of the vine undressed. For it is the Jubilee, it shall be holy unto you. Ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. They're going to tell you exactly the opposite of this, by the way, when we get down further. It's telling you very clearly you don't sow nor reap during the 50th year, correct? When we get down further, you're going to see it's going to say sow, but you're not allowed to reap. They were very inconsistent, and they did it on purpose, by the way. They did this on purpose. They need to tell you the truth. And in a lot of these cases where you'll see a lie and then the exact opposite, this isn't the case. This means to harvest. So you can't eat from your field of what grows on its own. You can't harvest the field. But in the cases where you'll see they'll say something and then they'll say exactly the opposite, they need to put confusion in your mind, right? If they don't tell you the truth, then you're a heathen. You're not judged as an Israelite. You're a heathen. So they want to tell you the truth, but they want to make it confusing, and they want to make it as difficult as they can. So they apply all of these hoops for you to jump through in order for the truth to be kept, in order for it to be kept, kind of like the Pharisees. But they want to tell you the truth, but they don't want you to believe it. So they'll put the confusion there, and then they'll send out one of their agents, for lack of a better word, one of their people. It's a Satanist, okay? A Satanist. And especially if you're a man, then you're very vulnerable. All she has to do is curl her lip and you're a Christian? You believe that? It's so dumb. And men will change for women. Women aren't going to change. Women aren't going to give up their God. The Bible is absolutely, positively clear on that. We don't change for men. We just don't. So, but men will change And as clear as it is that women will not change, it is equally clear that men will change. There's no might change. It says they will change for their women. So the seed just needs to be planted, the seed of confusion, the seed of deception. And then some woman comes along and she starts curling her lip, and she knows in her mind what her plan is. She knows that she's seeking to deceive you. You, as a man, are going to generally think the best of her as a woman. You can't. Now, I don't know if this is true. I honestly don't know if this is true. But I just don't think you can turn a man away from a woman. I think, not a straight man. You just can't. I don't think you can turn a straight man away from a woman. Y'all are just very soft-hearted with us. It's just the way it is. Now, I could be wrong. I'm not a man. I don't know. But I've seen some pretty atrocious things. These women are out here telling men to their face that they want to sleep with another man. And the men are like, well, okay. What? I mean, where is the line? I've seen some pretty horrible things happen to the men, and men just adapt. I mean, unbelievably adapt. And then a lot of them don't adapt, and then they do something that's far worse, which they just start. I won't go into that. We'll just move on. I guess it's worse depending upon where you stand. It certainly is. I can't say that it's worse, because I think that is a perspective sort of thing, and it certainly doesn't apply to everyone. So I take that back. It's not far worse. Well, it could be depending upon your perspective. In the year of this Jubilee, you shall return every man unto his possession. And if thou sell aught unto thy neighbor, or buyest aught of thy neighbor's hand, ye shall not oppress one another. So we're getting into the truth part here, but it's not the truth for the Jubilee. It's the truth for the 7th year Sabbath. The 7th year is the year of Jubilee. It's the only year of Jubilee. Every 7 years, a person is supposed to be returned to their possessions and to their family, if they're a slave. And if thou sell aught unto thy neighbor, or buyest aught of thy neighbor's hand, ye shall not oppress one another. According to the number of years after the Jubilee, thou shalt buy of thy neighbor, and according unto the number of years of the fruits he shall sell unto thee. According to the number of years thou shalt increase the price thereof, and according to the fewness of the years thou shalt diminish the price of it. For according to the number of the years of the fruits does he sell unto thee. Now, how are you supposed to calculate this over a 50-year period? A 50-year period means once in your lifetime. Can you imagine having a piece of land in your family for 50 years, and then someone comes knock on your door 50 years later and says, yeah, well, my great-grandparent told me this was my house and my land, and that I have a claim on it 50 years. Yeah, he died a couple of years ago, but yeah, it's still mine. Some of you have not lived 50 years. This might be two 1.5 lifetimes for you. But if you just think back for the few short years that you've been on this earth and what has transpired in those few years, then you can see the flaw in this. It's 50 years is too long. It doesn't work. You're supposed to assess the price thereof for 50 years from now? No. The land might be priceless 50 years from now. According to the multitude of years thou shalt increase the price thereof, and according to the fewness of years thou shalt diminish the price of it. It works for 7 years because it may become more valuable after 7 years, but it won't be significantly more valuable as a 50-year time frame might determine. For according to the number of the years of the fruits does he sell unto thee. And it's just a different way of assessing. You shall not therefore oppress one another, but thou shalt fear thy God, for I am the Lord your God. Wherefore ye shall do my statutes and keep my judgments and do them. And ye shall dwell in the land in safety, and the land shall yield her fruit, and ye shall eat your fill, and dwell therein in safety. And if ye shall say, now keep in mind it's supposed to be the 7th year, but they changed it, but they didn't really change this part. And if ye shall say, what shall we eat the 7th year? Behold, we shall not sow, nor gather in our increase. Now this would normally be the 49th year and the 50th year, but it goes to 7th year because all of this was just added in. It was just tacked onto this part. So they didn't change this part. And if you shall say, what shall we eat the 7th year? Behold, we shall not sow, nor gather in our increase. Then I will command my blessing upon you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years. And ye shall sow in the 8th year, which we're told the 8th year is the 50th year, right? And it says you do not sow in the 50th year. You don't sow the land and you don't reap the land. But they just messed up here. And eat of the old fruit until the 9th year. So you can sow, but you don't reap. And you can't eat off the land because you've sown it. But you're supposed to eat of the old fruit until the 9th year. I'm not really sure what they were doing here. I think this was just an oversight on their part. They just made a mistake. But this is a big mistake because it's illogical. How are you going to sow the land in the 8th year? They left this in is what they did. I just realized it. They left the 8th year in from the original. And then they just added in, eat of the old fruit until the 9th year. Okay, I didn't see that before. In our scenario, in real life, the Israelites would have sown in the 8th year. They would have let the land rest in the 7th year. So they left this in by mistake, and then they just added in, eat of the old fruit until the 9th year. Until the fruits come in, ye shall eat of the old store. I actually drew out a chart, but I don't think it's needed anymore now that I see the mistake that they made. So we're going to stop here, and then we will pick up with our scriptures, our review scriptures that we have, that our support scriptures that we have in regards to the year of Jubilee. I'll talk with you in the next video.